Not wishing to stay in this godforsaken port for any longer than absolutely necessary, we set about doing our work quickly once we arrived and had docked. It's hard to imagine many ports that could be stranger than the Iron Republic. The people here don't act as you would expect people to do, and objects themselves seem to take on strange properties in this place. Simply filing a port report seemed almost impossible, as every time I looked away from the inkwell, it seemed to freeze. Before we could complete our work in the Iron Republic and leave the port for good, I was approached by a very enthusiastic person. She simply could have introduced herself to me as a gunner and I would have taken her on just because we have nothing better currently, though she was very forceful in making me look at her references. Having made a new addition to our crew and finally completing the port report, we were finally free to leave. I was glad to be leaving the wretched hellscape that was the Iron Republic. Soot and steam made my lungs feel as though they were being suffocated. The salty sea air allowed me to breathe again. I was rather getting used to the smell. I was settling in for our long journey when the helmsman suddenly turned us hard to the port. I jumped up to see what had caused the course change and heard a horrible sound. Looking out over the bow, I could see a massive swirl of water, a maelstrom. The helmsman informed me this one was well known and was named Adam's Doom. We skirted around it, not getting too close. Not a moment after we had left the maelstrom behind, a jelly began swimming directly towards our bow. I had the men ready the cannons. Our first shot hit true, striking the jelly hard, but doing surprisingly little despite its soft body. Our cannon fired again and the jelly rammed our hull with a great burst of sudden speed. It performed this ramming maneuver again, pushing us back towards the maelstrom. We kept firing until the cap blew open, the jelly defeated. It was large and quite phosphorus. One of the sailors told me it was called a jelly fleur. I figured it would make a mess on the deck, so we let it disperse into the sea. For a moment I thought I saw a woman's face in the cap, but then it dissolved without a sound. Some ways further into our journey we encountered another jelly, this time off our starboard side. It was circling back around our starboard side towards the stern. I wanted to see if I could find the woman's face again, so I gave the order to engage. At the rate we were going, our hull was going to need some repairs. Again, we let it dissolve, and again, there was a hint of a face before it disappeared. As we passed the Cumene Canal, a ship passed on our starboard side, likely going through the canal to the surface. We couldn't watch for long as a thick fog created a wall on our port side. As thick as it was, there was a yellow glow far in the distance. It became lighter as we approached, and I soon realized it was another megalops. It seemed to ignore us, until we got close and our cannon fired at its body. It took the shot full on, but charged through and rammed our hull. It tried to retreat, but it was followed by a cannon shot. I had the sailors bring it up for another dissection. Another crab blocked our passage through the Murray Straits. Before we could even fire, it charged past our starboard bow, rushing all the way to the stern. The helmsman tried to circle us around for a shot, but it was too quick. I clawed into our stern and continued circling to the port side. It attacked again and received a heaty cannon shot for its efforts. It came in for another charge on our bow, but the cannon was quicker, and another dissection was made. The familiar lights of fallen London greeted us as we returned to the port. We had more travels ahead of us, so I figured the sailors would want some time on shore, especially after our recent stay in the Iron Republic, which we had all found to be a very draining experience. Unfortunately, there's no rest for the weary. As I left the ship, I was confronted by the blind bruiser yet again. He spoke in thinly veiled terms, though it seemed very unnecessary to me because, of course, I already knew what he was going to say to me before he had said it. I was asked to make a small detour and deliver some cargo. I could hardly say no, of course, because, as he put it, I am the obliging sort. Having had yet another draining encounter mere moments after leaving the ship, I quickly set about tending to my work so that I could simply retire for the night. Thankfully, I didn't have too many errands to run that day. I went to the Scholar again and sold my information before visiting the Admiralty's office. I handed in all the port reports, and most of them were perfectly normal, though the one from the Iron Republic was blank on both sides. I could have sworn that I had written something on those pages, though the Admiralty informed me that this was not an uncommon occurrence from the Iron Republic. Having completed all my errands, I retired to my quarters immediately. I was glad to hopefully have a peaceful night's sleep for once.